What is marijuana? Marijuana is a psychoactive herb that comes from a cannabis plant. It contains a psychoactive compound known as THC, and it is used for medical, recreational, and spiritual purposes. All forms of cannabis are mind-altering psychoactive drugs, and no matter the form, it contains THC. I'm going to be talking about the cannabis use disorder. Cannabis use disorder is CUD. It is a condition that develops when a person has a problematic pattern of cannabis usage that causes a considerable impairment or distress. It is characterized by symptoms like an increased tolerance to cannabis, withdrawal symptoms when trying to stop using cannabis, failed attempts to quit or cut down on cannabis use, and spending a lot of time using or recovering from cannabis use, and giving up significant activities or responsibilities due to the usage. Symptoms of cannabis use disorder is that it is often taken in larger amounts or over a longer period than intended to. There's a persistent desire or an unsuccessful effort to cut down or control the cannabis usage. A great deal of time is spent on activities necessary to obtain, use, or recover from its effects. Craving or a strong desire or urge to use cannabis, recurrent cannabis use resulting in a failure to fulfill major obligations at work, school, or home, or just like everyday hobbies that you would usually do if you weren't using. Continued cannabis use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems caused by the effects of it. Important social, occupational, or recreational activities are given up or reduced because of the usage. So you're just not doing your everyday activities like you usually would. And that recurrent cannabis use in situations which causes physical danger. And that the cannabis use is continued despite the knowledge of having a persistent or recurrent physical or psychological problem that is caused by it. Treatment for cannabis use disorder is, so treatment for a CUD is individualized where they focus on, no matter who you are, it's going to be focused on you. No two people are going to have the same treatment, with a focus on acknowledging the problem and controlling the craving. Behavioral strategies, medication, and support groups may be used to help patients reduce the drug use and improve functioning, minimizing complications, and adopt healthier lifestyles. Treatment for CUD involves a combination of behavioral therapies, medication, and support from family and friends. And it is important to seek professional help if you or someone you know is struggling with CUD, or in that case, any substance use disorder. And specific treatments may include detoxification, counseling, behavioral therapy, and support groups.
Marijuana has always been a topic of discussion because it hasn't always been legal at the federal level. But recently it has become legal in some states, which has begun to spark a lot more controversy. But that's another topic for another day. So, cannabis varieties and the use of marijuana. People who use marijuana tend to use it for relaxing effects because it tends to relax them and calm them down. But that's not for everyone. Some people get relaxed. Some people get super anxious. So it's basically all down to the person. Another factor is it's used to help manage pain, make it easier to tolerate pain. So I've seen that a lot of professional athletes, including football, which is a very high collision sport and has a lot of pain associated with it, but they tend to use cannabis in order to deal with the pain that they experience. Some use it to focus, which some people that I know, they just become absolutely locked in once they use it, and it's quite the feat. So, what cannabis is plants covered in microscopic mushroom-shaped hair-like structures called trichomes. And then these trichomes can be acquired in different ways to produce different concentrations of THC or tetrahydrocannabinol. And how cannabis concentrates are made. So there's so many ways, but these are just some ways that they can create concentrated cannabis. So first one is dry processing. Second one is dry ice processing. Third is water-based processing. Fourth is combining pressure with heat. Kind of self-explanatory. Fifth one is using non-flammable carbon dioxide solvents. And the last one of this list is using flammable solvents, including butane, which is used in lighters, propane, ether, or alcohol. So using flammable solvents tends to be popular because it creates products with high THC levels. It's relatively cost efficient. It tends to have longer lasting effects. So in all honesty, who wouldn't use this? Because it has all the positives going for it. So butane creates the most potent marijuana concentrate, which again is the last way. So why wouldn't you use it then? And then after this, the final products look like gooey liquid wax, a soft solid comparable to lip balm, as you can imagine that, and then hard amber colored solid. So these are normally appealing to the eye, as one might say. The effects of marijuana. According to a study, it shows disadvantage learning, attention, processing speed, which goes back to how it relaxes people, and then subtle abnormalities in brain structures, increased activation during cognitive tasks despite intact performance, and compromised objective indicators of sleep quality. So, as many may say, they use it for sleep, but it might be affecting their sleep. And then, if someone were to smoke it and go to operate a vehicle, say for example, they'd be driving under the influence as comparable to alcohol. So, marijuana has a substantial amount of negative effects on the brain when it is used in adolescence. This is because the brain is still developing at this stage. So, anything that targets the brain is going to affect it negatively because it'll stunt the growth, but also not allow the brain to grow. The use of marijuana also has a negative effect on the endocrine system and reproductive system, which causes both of these to not activate properly and basically cause them to not be as useful.
Hi, I'm Abby Breland. I'm going to be presenting our marijuana presentation. I'm going to be presenting slides 9 through 12. So the first slide is cons of marijuana. The first of those is going to be brain development. So people who use marijuana have been found to have impairments in memory, learning, attention, and decision making. While it's difficult to pinpoint the effect of cannabis on something as complex as brain development, teenagers who use even small amounts have been found to have changes in the structure of their brains. Another con is that it is possible to become addicted to marijuana just like any other drug. Also, it can cause temporary psychosis. Another problem is that it can have a lot of negative effects on pregnancy. And of course, money loss. It is expensive, and obviously becoming addicted, it would take more and more money as it goes on. Moving on to the next slide, how common is it? Nearly half of 12th graders have tried marijuana and 6% use daily. And this is a large amount of high school students that have tried it and continue to use it as well. High school students are exposed to it before they even finish high school. Obviously, if they're starting in middle school, it's a problem. Stated by the National Drug Institute, about 30.7 of high school seniors have used cannabis in the past year. Obviously, that's a rough number, but that gives you an estimate of how many people are using it. Moving on to our next slide, marijuana from a biblical worldview. So smoking marijuana is a sin, and it does go against the biblical worldview for a few reasons. The first one of which is that we are expected to obey the law. Obviously, it is legalized in many ways here, whether it's medically or whether you're over 21 and it's legally recreational in your state. However, it is still illegal for a lot of people. And so the Bible verse that I chose for that is Romans 13:1-4. The next point on this subject is that the Bible warns against intoxication and altering your mind. And the verse I chose for that is Proverbs 23:31-35. And the next thing is that we are called to give control to God, not weed or drugs or alcohol or whatever else that it may be. So the verse that I did choose for that is 1 Corinthians 6:12. So obviously people smoke in order to alter their mind or get a release, that sense of a high. And that is exactly what is taking the control from the individual. So when the individual gives the control to that drug instead of God, that's basically saying that they trust that more than God and they're relying on that instead of God. And so that's why if it were to come between an individual and their relationship with God, I could see where that would be a sin. And then lastly, our references page is on slide 12 if you'd like to see it. And thank you for everything.